Welcome to How to Sell More. Today, we're discussing how your energy impacts your sales with Elyse Archer, the founder of the She Sells movement, which empowers entrepreneurs and sales professionals to revolutionize how they sell, explode their income, and achieve quantum leaps in all areas of life. I'm Mark Drager. Let's get into it. Elyse, you are, of course, the host of She Sells podcast, or She Sells radio, I should say, to get the brand right. You're really well known within the market as a sales leader, a sales coach, and a trainer to help specifically women who want to be able to generate more revenue. You know, these are business leaders, these are professional salespeople, but you've really niched down to help women. And I'm curious whether there is actually a difference between how men and women approach sales.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, first of all, well done on pronouncing She Sells correctly, because that is rare. Usually people get very tongue tied. I didn't think about that when I was naming the brand, but good job there. Yes, there's 100% a difference. And so I think we can talk about it from a number of different angles. And you kind of tell me where you want to go with it, Mark. So I was really inspired to create the brand, and I'll just share maybe a little bit of personal backstory that those listening can maybe relate to. Spent many, many years in corporate sales, top of the leaderboard, doing all the quote unquote right things. But what I wasn't telling anyone was that inwardly, I was struggling so much with anxiety, burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion. I was like getting up at 2 a.m. just to try to outperform and outwork everyone. And then I also found that a lot of the sales techniques that were encouraged in the workspace I was working in just didn't feel right. It could be things like hard close someone, push the sale, force the sale, very transactional versus relational. And I learned to sell that way. But again, on the outside, I looked like I was successful, but it was at the expense of my health, my well-being, my mental and physical well-being. And so I kind of went on this journey to start looking for, is there another way to sell? Is there a different way to make money that not only is effective, but also feels good and feels aligned? And started working with incredible female mentors who were making a lot of money and doing really well and doing it in a way that was so different than what I'd been taught previously. And when I took what they were applying, not only did it feel a lot better, but I actually 10x'd my income, was able to create a lot of big quantum leaps in my sales too. And so this is what I think is so magical about what we're doing in the She Sells community now, is there is a different way. And I think the challenge for a lot of women, and whether you're in sales, whether you're a female entrepreneur, is if it feels like friction in the selling process, and even if you're doing all the right things and maybe you're making money, but again, you're exhausted, overwhelmed, feeling depleted, things aren't feeling right to you and how you're selling, you're trying to play out of a playbook that was never made for you in the first place. So there's a lot of differences all the way down to managing our energy cycles and how we align sales activities with our energy cycles to, yes, it is okay to be relational when selling. And in fact, I think that's a superpower for women. So you tell me where you want to go with that. There's a lot of differences, and I'm happy to dive into any of them.
Well, as you're describing this, though, I'm already feeling for myself in my past experiences, like I don't come from a professional sales background. I mean, I went to film school, right? And so I have learned as an entrepreneur and as a marketer how to be able to sell. But my version of selling sounds exactly like what you're talking about. So is this really a question of men versus women? Is this more a question of personality? Is this more a question of approach, or masculine versus feminine energy? Or is this more of a universal thing? Because some of us just are not comfortable with chasing people down, with direct sales, with, hammering people time and time again and following up every single day and bugging people. And there's the sales approach where people say, if you haven't offended people by noon, you're not doing a good job. If you're not telling people to, if people aren't telling you to go fuck yourself, then you're not pushing hard enough. And I'm just not cool with that.
Gosh, absolutely. Amen. Amen. Yeah. When I was, and I want to come back to what you said there, because the masculine, feminine energy piece is actually key and critical to what we're talking about. When I was thinking about how would I describe the brand, I thought, because most people know Grant Cardone, right? And this is no disrespect to Grant Cardone, but a lot of what you said there, I remember hearing from him early on, and man, that just doesn't feel right to me. And I think he's kind of shifted over the years too. But I was like, our brand would be if Grant Cardone and Abraham Hicks had a love child, it would come together, I think, to create She Sells and to create our community. So to your point, there's a lot of sales tactics that are just icky, regardless of your gender and regardless of how you're wired. But what I've found is really digging into masculine and feminine energy. And when I first heard, I don't know about you, when I first heard that, I was like, what is this? This doesn't even make any sense. Like, this sounds really woo and out there. And I didn't see a business application for it. But learning about it and going deeper into it, we all have both masculine and feminine energy. And masculine is about the outcome. It is push. It's about giving, generosity. It's structure. It's linear. It's make 100 cold calls. You'll reach this many people. You'll sell this many. And I think what's happened is in the sales world, we've gone completely, at least especially in corporate and a lot of older organizations that maybe aren't quite as up to speed, it's completely masculine, which whether you're man, woman, whatever your gender, doesn't matter. That's going to feel out of alignment at some level. So the feminine energy is the other complement of that. And again, we all have feminine too. Feminine is about receiving, it's relational, it's more about the journey rather than the destination. So it's, one of my clients just shared in our group chat today, like she built such a beautiful relationship with one of her clients that his wife hand created a baby pouch for her. It's not quite the right word, but she just had a baby and she hand knit this and they sent it from Brazil over to her. And his wife spent 3 months building it and creating it because she had built such a strong relationship. And that's feminine. That's the feminine energy, is we can be relational and actually sell more in that. So to your point, it is actually a more universal conversation. And I think the real magic happens, again, whatever your gender, when you figure out how to align both of those and then learn to tap into, okay, is this a time when I need more masculine? I need the structure, I need the support. Or is this a time when, no, I want to take some time and build the relationship and leverage it that way, because that's going to be a bigger long-term win. 100%. I would say it's about energy.
I guess if you're able to be self-aware enough to know whether your organization tends to lean more one way or the other, whether you're a leader or you're working in the organization, the greatest benefits you can have is to double down on what comes naturally to you, or to learn to grab some of this opposite polarizing energy and bring it into your practice.
I mean, I think you have to look at what your results are, right? So they're always going to speak. I think if you are doing all the things and your organization, the people on your team are doing all the things, but there's, again, health issues, exhaustion, burnout, depletion, or you're stuck and you're stagnant at results, that's an indication that you swung really far in masculine. And if you're not getting a lot of results, and there's a lot of
time. Oh, please don't tell me. Hold on. Are you about to say if you're not getting a lot of results, if you're not making any progress, if you have a lot of friends but no money, you've gone too feminine? Are you about to say that?
We may have gone a little bit too feminine.
I did not expect. I mean, I thought you were going there. I was like, there's no way she's going to say this out loud, though, right?
Shocking. But one thing I will say, though, that I love about tapping into, and this is where I work with actually a lot of men privately who want to tap into more of that feminine, because the feminine is illogical in a good way. It's about the quantum leap. And I actually was able to, this is something I love teaching my clients. It's part of how I 10x my income so fast, was I learned to tap into feminine, because it's about, most organizations will set sales goals that are 2 to 5% bigger than what they did last year. Feminine would say, what do we really want to do? What's the quantum leap? What's the 10x? What feels exciting and expansive? We don't even know how we're going to get there, but let's set that as the vision. And then the masculine is okay, what's the structure? What's the plan? What's the strategy to help support that? So again, we need a both. It's a both and that's really where the magic is.
So I know in your teaching and in your content, you talk a lot about energy, and it seems like we've gotten there pretty quickly, but you also talk about this idea of being in your power. What does that mean to, as it relates to a sales process, to being able to sell more? What does that mean to focus on energy and to focus on being in your power?
So there's this concept I'm playing with, which will be in my book, which I call selling from wholeness. So what I've found, and this was my own experience too, is that I sought money and making a certain amount of sales for so many years, unconsciously looking for validation. And it was if I could just be at the top of the leaderboard, then I'll be good enough. Then I'll feel worthy. And what happens is when we're coming from that place, it's never enough. It doesn't matter how many sales you make. It doesn't matter what your numbers are. It's never going to be enough. So the real shift I found, and this ties into being in your power, is when you do the inner work to actually feel good enough, whole, complete, without needing any sort of outer validation, which is the hardest work we'll ever do. But I think it's the deepest, most important work. When we come at sales from that place, we're not trying to push or hard close or force a sale because we think it's going to make us good enough. We think it's going to, help us hit the numbers that then will be valid, then we'll be worthy. It's more, no, I'm good. I'm complete. I'm happy with who I am. And then from that place, I'm able to see what's actually of service to you. So being in your power is more of a, I'd say, a lean back energy when you're in a sales conversation, where it's not like the bracing, oh my gosh, I've got to make this sale or else, right? Because then again, we're giving our power in something we can't control. Instead, it's I'm good, I'm complete, I'm whole. And again, there's work we got to do to get there. That's, I think, the journey we all get to take in this life. And from that place, I'm going to lean back and be able to evaluate, can I actually serve you? Do I want to work with you? Which, for anyone listening who's a service provider, a coach, a consultant, like, we need to evaluate our clients as much as they're evaluating us, because we've all had those client relationships that are learning lessons, but we don't necessarily want to bring on a lot more of those. And then from that place, we can have a really healthy, unbiased look at, is this a good fit? It's a concept I just did on a joint webinar with one of my friends and clients, former clients, Ian Koniak too, where we call it abundance selling versus scarcity selling, right? So being in your power is abundance selling. Like, I'm good. I'm okay whether or not you buy from me. Scarcity selling is, I need this or else. So it's that. So it's a huge shift, but it will transform the experience of your sales conversations. And as a byproduct, because you're more relaxed, because you don't need it, you're going to end up selling more anyway. So it's like the counterintuitive approach to making more money and more sales.
You just reminded me when I was early on when I launched my agency, I launched at 23, having really no sales experience and 5 months in, almost bankrupt. Which makes sense. But the best thing I ever did was I asked for help, and I hired a business coach who came specifically from a sales background, ran sales teams. And there were two things he said that stuck with me, which was, the first one is, some will, some won't, so what? Right? Just this idea of some will move ahead, some won't move ahead, whatever. And the other thing was, he said, you have to walk into every conversation like you have $1 million of cash sitting in your pocket right now. And frankly, you just don't need this. You want to help people. You'd love to help people, but you don't really need this. And while I remembered both of those things, and I've told myself that, there's a gap between, there's emotional gap between having the confidence to be like, I have $1 million in my pocket. It doesn't really matter to me if you move ahead. Some will, some won't. So what? And the sting of like, oh, you didn't pick me. I didn't crack the code. We didn't get a chance to make this out. I need to make payroll. And so, are there strategies? Are there tactics? Are there things we can do to close that confidence gap?
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you putting your validation, right? So we want to always check to, am I looking outside of me for validation? Am I saying I'm only good enough or only worthy if someone says yes to me? Because from that energy, and that's how I used to sell, you're going to feel like if somebody doesn't say yes, you're not good enough. And frankly,
I sold that way for a decade. It's not fun. I mean, it's fun when you get the deal and you're like, we are the best. And then the next day you're like, we are the worst.
It's such a roller coaster, right? And that roller coaster comes anytime you're putting your self-esteem in something outside of you, which again, we are taught to do, we are conditioned to do, but man, it's powerful when you can let that go. To that point, I think it's, how are you defining confidence? Right. And I do think there is a degree of needing to have a trust in something greater than you in this process too, whatever that looks like for you. But what are you putting your confidence in? And if you're putting your confidence in how you show up and what you can control every day, right? Which is like, is my mindset in alignment with what I'm looking to create? Am I thinking about the end vision created? Am I emotionally attaching to that? And then am I taking the aligned action steps? Success is inevitable. So I think we have to redefine a good sales call too, or a successful sales call from it. I think we currently define it, at least even just in our minds, as like, it was only good. It was only successful if someone buys from me. Well, if you're talking to enough people and selling to enough people, you're going to get people where it's not a good fit. So to me, if we can redefine success as, I helped them get what they needed, whether that was working with me or not, again, that abundant selling approach, you're going to attract more clients. You're going to attract more opportunities. You're going to make more money. You're going to be able to pay more people on your team. I think it's being able to shift and transition from the short-term immediate, oh my gosh, my nervous system is freaking out because I just looked at the bank account and it doesn't look good, to getting reconnected with a bigger picture vision and then showing up as that version of you who already has your goals completed.
It totally makes sense to me. I'm just wondering if these are things that make people feel better, or if they're actually effective, or if because it makes people feel better, they are effective.
It's both. Yeah, it's both. So part of why it's important, and this is something that I was just talking about with my with one of my group clients, my group coaching programs this week, is your feeling state matters a lot, not just in sales, but in life. And there's neuroscience behind this too. So this isn't some out there concept. So we can only think and create ideas to the level of our emotional state. So you want to think about, what's the result I'm looking to create? Maybe it's $1 million in my business this year. Okay, why do I want that? What's the core underlying essence of why I want that? Well, money in and of itself is just, it's just money. It's not doing a lot for us, but what do I want to do with that? I want freedom, right? So if I want to create a result of freedom, the energy in which we do a thing creates the outcome of the thing. So if I'm coming into the sales call and I'm feeling lack, limitation, restriction, I'm only going to be able to think thoughts on that sales call that are equivalent to lack, limitation, restriction, which means I'm probably not going to get a great outcome out of it. I'm probably going to be like nervous, worried about what the other person thinks about me. I'm not going to be open to, sometimes we get those downloads like, this person needs to hear that or say that to that person, right? And we're not going to get as good results. So when we learn to check in with our emotional state and learn to focus on, how can I elevate my emotional state to be in alignment with the end results I'm looking for, with my goal, not only do we become an energetic match for that, but we also access higher levels of thinking. Because if I'm feeling abundant, free, creative, I'm going to have thoughts and ideas in alignment with that will get me to the actions I need to take to get to my goal. And we've all experienced that. If I'm in fear, if I'm in restriction, if I'm in self-doubt, that's not when we have our most powerful conversations, our most powerful ideas. If we're feeling good, we're feeling free, we're feeling abundant, we're feeling creative, that's when the ideas come that actually create the quantum leap to get you to where you want to go.
And so if our listeners are hearing this and either they're going, like sometimes I get that little tickle up my back where I'm like, or the hair stands up on the back of my neck because I kind of feel like, you're talking to me like, oh man, this is something I need to work on. And so maybe our listener is that leader and they know that this is something they have to work on. Or maybe they have a team of people and they're like, how do I get my team to start thinking this way more? What is the first step for us to do this for ourselves, or even to be able to start teaching these concepts to our team? Because if we come from that, let's say masculine, traditional, sell like hell approach, or frankly, all the way on the other side where it's super organic and you're like, I'm not scaling and I'm not making the money I want, which has been me for most of my career. What do we do as our first step?
So I would do a process that I teach my clients, because at the end of the day, I think lasting success in sales or in anything, it's all about alignment. Are you aligning with the goal that you want to create, or are you not? And you are, because either you feel connected to it, you feel like it's happening even if it hasn't happened yet, or are you feeling distance and separation and fear and anxiety around it? So I would write a very vivid, detailed description of what is it that you're looking to create. So you're listening to this now. What do you want to create? And you can do it by the end of the year. You can do it for the current year you're in. Whenever you're listening to this, what's your goal? Maybe you want to do it shorter term, next 30 days. And then the only reason it hasn't happened yet is you haven't aligned with it yet. You're not an aligned match for it yet. Alignment is when our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions match up with the result we're looking to create. So then I would look at that goal and I would say, for someone who has that result, all right, what are the thoughts they're thinking? What are the feelings they're feeling? And then what are the actions that they're taking every day? And it sounds simple, Mark, but it gets to be such a reality check, and you'll see, okay, here's where I'm not showing up in alignment with that. And okay, that's what we need to do. So then how do I start to step into showing up like that person? And I personally, I write it out. I write a self-image statement. I listen to it multiple times throughout the day. And it's like, here's who I'm being. Here's how I'm showing up. Here's the thoughts I'm thinking. Here's the actions I'm taking. And over time, we condition your subconscious mind to actually believe that that is who you are. And from that place, you'll take actions and show up as that person. The end result is inevitable. But that's what I would do. I would do a self check and just kind of see, okay, where am I doing well? Where are the gaps? No judgment on that. But then if you want a different result, you got to start showing up like a different person. So you got to start showing up like that person now. But we need awareness of who they are.
That is so good. Often before I jump on a call, I'll remind myself, like, I'm here to help and I'm here to have fun. And as long as I can have some fun with the person I'm across from, and I can try and figure out how to help them, I'm good. But I've recently started reminding myself, to your point, like, I need to push them into the next step and let them know there's another step and that they're eventually going to pay me for something. like this isn't just about having fun and helping. this is actually going to lead to the next step. And there's a sales process and you can buy something and you can work with us. So I find your advice super, super helpful.
Oh yeah. And that's again, it's like that's part of the action piece, right? So there's going to be a level in which you got to skill up if you want to get to another level. So how do I skill up my sales skills? I listen to Mark's podcast, right? I do that. So it's the being and the action. And that's really the alignment between the feminine and the masculine that creates the magic. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. And so Elyse, final question for you. It's the question I end every podcast episode with. What is your number one strategy or tip for how to sell more?
Okay, I'm going to do a really short and sweet that's completely different than what we talked about because it's going to be super tactical. So this is my favorite thing. There is gold sitting in your LinkedIn inbox, your Instagram inbox, wherever your social media is. Very, very simply, when you get either a new connection request on LinkedIn, a new follower on social, send a message, actually talk and find out why did they connect with you. I do this every day to people who reach out and follow and connect. And some people are looking to sell you something and that's fine, but it's incredible how quickly you'll uncover opportunities from people who are like, oh, I was actually referred to you by so-and-so. I'm looking to do this in my business, or I'm looking to create this result. I thought you could give me some good ideas. From that place, it opens up a dialogue. And I know people who build multi-million dollar businesses, literally just selling in chat throughout the day, talking this way and engaging. So look at what are some of the resources I have right now to help me grow my sales. And I tell you, whoever's following you, whoever's connecting with you, start a conversation. It can be really simple, really organic. And you'll find that there's just buried treasure and gold in there if you're not doing that already. So simple daily practice, and it will create a huge result and impact on your bottom line.
Okay, that was a powerful conversation. But to wrap things up, it's time for the 3-point roundup. Number 1, there is this fight within each of us to lean into the female energy or the male energy. And in sales, we can see how that rolls out in different ways. And so Elyse really did help emphasize the importance of understanding and harnessing both female and male energies in sales. Instead of viewing these as opposite forces, they really should be considered complementary because then you can create a well-rounded approach to your sales. Number 2, different types of sales relationships and processes and cultures require different energies. And so it's really about situational awareness. Depending on your client, depending on the situation, depending on your approach, your product, all of us who are responsible for making money and sales, we really need to adjust our approach. Some clients might respond better to a more empathetic approach or a nurturing approach, which is that female energy, while others might appreciate a bit more of a direct or logic-based approach, which is the male energy. And number 3, self-awareness and being authentic and true to who you are is crucial for success. This comes down to your personal growth, and Elyse really did highlight the importance of being self-aware because once you can understand your dominant energy, you can then work to balance that out and incorporate some of the other energies that she spoke about. This is also going to help you avoid burnout, and ultimately it's going to lead to more authentic connections, which in turn will build more trust with the client. It'll build more value in the relationship, and it's going to lead to more successful sales outcomes. And so I want to thank Elyse Archer for joining us today. You can learn more about her by heading over to Instagram. Her handle is @Elyse Archer. While you're there, why not give us a follow as well? Our handle is @SalesLoopBrand. And one last thing, if you've made it this far into the show, you really should subscribe. Why? Because each week I share practical strategies and tips just like what Elyse shared with us today to supercharge your business growth and boost sales. With that said, I'm Mark Drager, challenging you to sell more. Thanks for listening.